Hey, thanks for clicking on the video. Exotics are often the true end game of Destiny. Collecting them, using them, showing them off. Of the massive amount of exotics in this game, raid exotics stand atop as the most difficult to get. And with that difficult acquisition, it often comes with increased firepower. So I analyzed every single raid exotic and its impact within the PvE endgame of Destiny 2. And I don't just mean which ones are good right now, I looked at the present and past sandboxes and measured their total impact on Destiny 2 the video game. That means I looked at day 1 raid races, dungeon races, how powerful they are or were in GM level content, etc. to answer which one is the best. And of the 12 in game, I narrowed it down to the top 5, which I'm going to show to you today. Also, if you enjoy this kind of video, I put out a similar one for the dungeon exotics, and if you like my stuff, a subscription would be greatly appreciated. So, starting with what is the 5th best raid exotic, we have one of our newer additions, Necrochasm. This exotic returned to Destiny with Crota's End's reprisal during Season of the Witch. This kinetic auto rifle launched in a pretty weak state actually, but through some buffs and a reworked catalyst, it's a fantastic option these days. I'm sure some of you can recall this viral clip of Datto using the recently buffed Necrochasm, which encapsulates how it performs now. Again, on paper and efficacy wise, it's very good, but if you're like me, you don't see it too often. The reasoning behind this comes with the restrictions put in place by anti-champion systems. The last time I saw Necrochasm everywhere was during the season where we had anti-champ auto rifle mods. And when you can use Necrochasm in the endgame, it definitely shreds. Constant explosions, beefed up fire rate, this is just a very, very good exotic primary. A lot of comparisons were made between it and Kvastov, which is honestly a top exotic of all time. Necrochasm is on this list because it is just one of the best exotics. But as for its impact across the game, it gets limited in certain areas, which is why it's just number 5, although it has earned this spot. Moving on to number 4, we have 1000 Voices. This one-of-a-kind heavy fusion rifle released way back in Destiny 2's first major DLC, Forsaken. It came with the Last Wish raid, which is still playable today, so you can go and get yourself this exotic, but the potency of this exotic has come and go. When it first launched, it was very novel, but it wasn't really dominating any loadouts. However, as time went on, a couple things happened. One is that 1K has pretty much only seen buffs in the last 7 years, adding things like ignitions to the beam as well as gradually getting more ammo. But before we talk about how actually good it is now, I have to mention a few times it went crazy. One was during Season of the Lost with Particle Deconstruction, not to be confused with the episode Heresy's Particle Reconstruction. This perk allowed 1K to truly nuke everything, giving itself a debuff while being in a desirable sandbox. You're seeing it delete Taniks, but it even passed the litmus test of one-phasing its own raid boss. And as you can imagine, everything fell at its feet. And then outside of that, there was a week where 1000 Voices was simply receiving infinite ammo and became the hard meta for anything you were playing. But maybe we shouldn't count that, as it lasted for literally only 1 week. Now though, in the present day, 1000 Voices is just a good weapon. As recently as right at the 9, 1000 Voices sees use in the high level endgame. There are still some limitations that this exotic has, especially on the ammo side of things, but 1000 Voices really can just be a good heavy weapon that if you want to use something, you can put it on. And it's definitely one worth having, as it's not long until it returns as a meta choice, which easily puts it at spot number 4. Now moving on to number 3, we have the Legend of Acreus. This is Destiny 2's first raid exotic, dropping from the Leviathan raid way back in year 1. This heavy shotgun, making it one of 2, is another similar case of launching in an okay spot and then receiving buffs every now and then over its lifetime for the past 7 years. It started out just as a hard-hitting shotgun, nothing too special. But when its catalyst was changed to give it the perk Trench Barrel in Season of Plunder, it became a top DPS pick for bosses that it could hit instantly. Some of the bosses I have recently used this weapon on include Ear-Ute from Crota's End. Placing a well on her and going to town works extremely well. Then I've also used this on Master Herald of Finality, which is the newest raid. Acreus falls into a category of weapons that, while not used for a world's first and doesn't really have results in that tier of endgame content, it is used for optimizing stuff we know. Something that once you know how a boss works and acts, Acreus will and can eat them alive. But everything I mentioned so far is just in raid settings. I know you can also throw this exotic around in dungeons, and if Lord of Wolves didn't exist right now, Accurators would continue to be the go-to close-range DPS weapon. As I did research for this video, I actually found many different clips of Accurators one-phasing pretty much every boss that exists within its range. Of course, some are more optimal than others, but this weapon just works. And that's not even saying anything about how you can use this in in-game content against champions within activities like GMs. But that ability to be a viable DPS weapon on top of something that you can just whip out, run and gun with is what makes it a safe number 3 on today's list of best raid exotics. Now, before we look at number 2 and 1, which you might think you can guess, we have our honorable mentions for the top 5 list. Of the 12 raid exotics in the game, almost all of them are pretty good. Vex Mythoclast is a standout, but I don't think it's ever been crazy without specific builds at PvE. I do know for a fact that it would probably take the cake if we were talking about PvP though. Euphony and Conditional Finality are in similar spots. These two exotics are very good, but neither has yet to make a lasting impression on the meta and PvE in-game, so I didn't include them in the top 5. And then as a real honorable mention, we have Outbreak Perfected. This exotic pulse rifle technically is a raid exotic, it's just not from a raid that's in Destiny 2. If I were to include this pulse rifle though, its ability to pull off competitive DPS with infinite ammo would easily put it within the top 3. But now honorable mentions aside, we have the second best raid exotic, which is Anarchy. This ArcGL released with Scourge of the Past during Season of the Forge from Forsaken's release year. While being a personal favorite exotic of mine with its unique trip mine functionality, it's been a very good passive DPS weapon, which enabled so many different boss damage strategies. As for results, it was used for World's First Prophecy, mind you this was before contest mode existed, and then it was used for the World's First Vault of Glass reprisal. After that, it was seen in the most recent Dungeons World First Race as a means of damage against the Shrieker bosses in Sundered Doctrine. And while those were its best World's First results, Anarchy often dominated End-Game PVE loadouts. Before being nerfed substantially, this GL had so much ammo and did fantastic damage. Anyone running GMs or high-level missions always had this in their back pocket, and that was the case for quite a few years. Also, my personal favorite thing ever in Destiny was a DPS strategy called Double Slugging. This was really only enabled by Anarchy and was the most fun way to nuke raid and dungeon bosses. At this moment in time though, Anarchy may not be as widespread as it once was, but its unique abilities and remaining potency still makes it an option for anyone wanting to try it out. And with the massive and lasting impact it has had on the endgame, it deserves spot number 2 on this list. But now, looking at the best raid exotic, spot number 1, if it's not Anarchy, it has to be Divinity. This exotic, the subject of much controversy since its release, dropped from a quest within the Garden of Salvation raid. This weapon simultaneously debuffs enemies to take more damage, and it makes their crit massively easier to shoot. This combination of effects pretty much guaranteed this exotic would never leave a raider's toolset. And at one point, before the aforementioned controversy, this exotic was tied for the highest debuff in the game. But that aside, if it's the best, what results does it have? And well, it's honestly easier to name raids and dungeons that it wasn't used in for the world's first race. Looking at the list for raids, since Divinity's released, there hasn't been a single one where the world's first team didn't use Divinity. Immediately after Garden of Salvation's release, we saw it against Taniks for Deepstone Crypt. We saw it used against Atheon for Vault of Glass, Rolk from Vow the Disciple, War Priest, Herald from Salvation's Edge. You get the point. If Divinity can be used, it will be used, even in its nerf state. And then in settings where it's actually less optimal to run Divinity, like dungeon races, you still see it. As recent as Sundered Doctrine, Divinity is still a necessity for the endgame. And while its complete dominance of World's First Races is enough to give it the number 1 spot, you can even use this in GMs or exotic missions to stun overloads and let your team easily bake enemies with free crits. Divinity does kind of fly under the radar as arguably the strongest exotic in Destiny's history. But when a weapon is about support, people tend to forget how actually impactful it is. But it's funny, as I make this video leading up to Edge of Fate, I don't know what the DPS meta will be in the new raids and dungeons, but I would put my life on the line that you will see Divinity there. And with that, thank you so much for getting this far into the video. Your viewership means an absolute ton. Let me know down below if you agree or disagree. Again, if your favorite raid exotic isn't on this list, it's not that I don't like it, it's just that in the context of everything that I was ranking it in, it didn't make the cut. Also, let me know what I should rank next. Should it be Warlock exotics, Titan exotics, Hunter exotics, maybe just the best kinetic exotics? Let me know. If you want to support me and support the channel, a like, a comment, a subscription, joining the Discord goes a very long way. If you want to support me and support the channel, but you can't think of a comment, comment down below, rate exotics. And with that, as usual, I hope you're having a great day, and I hope to see you around.